Plexi Trust, German Marshall Fund of the United States Bucharest office. And I'm happy to be your host and moderator for the first panel, where we will be discussing innovating election observation, bridging regional expertise, and global practice in a hybrid threat landscape. I have a lineup of excellent speakers. So we have Martin Ängeby, Senior Advisor, Hybrid Council of Europe. We have Levan Natroshvili, Executive Director, the International Society for Fair Elections and Democracy. We have Mulle Musau, Regional Coordinator, East and Horn of Africa Election Observation Network. And I am told that online we have Eva Lazarova, Executive Director, Institute for Public Environment and Development. Ladies and gentlemen, if possible, I would give you 7 minutes to have your interventions, and then we'll have the Q&A so that we have the possibility also to take questions from the audience. So basically, we are talking about how we are digitalizing and how we are innovating in election observation and what the authorities or the different countries are doing to ensure election integrity and the fact that the elections remain fair and democratic. So we see a lot of interference. We have malign actors that are trying to overturn democratic elections. And for us, it's important to basically explore what we as civil society organizations, but also in collaboration with governments, are doing to keep democratic elections going on and to have a fair result that represents the will of the people. So we'll go into this panel first with Martin Ängeby. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And the COE does not mean the Council of Europe in this context. I work for the European Center of Excellence for Countering Hybrid Threats. It's a new organization based in Helsinki, founded in 2017. It's a membership organization of EU and NATO countries. And my whole life I've been working to support democracy, to promote democracy, and now I find myself in a place where we're defending democracy in the EU and the NATO countries. So this is where I work. I've been here in this center for about a month, and before this I was 3 years in Moldova as the NDI country director, and I think I would speak from that experience. As you know, or if you don't know, just to recapitulate Moldova, this is a country where all the hybrid methods of influencing politics are being applied. So it's digital, it's the information, it's party financing, it is all sorts of subversion. There are advanced vote buying schemes in the last election. The calculation is that 8 to 10% of the votes were actually bought. That is not to say that these people would have voted for the pro-Russian alternatives anyway, but they were encouraged to go actually to the polling station. So this is very serious. I see some risks when we're talking about the digital campaigning. And one of them is over-regulation. We believe that what we can see, we can regulate. So we regulate the activity of the parties very much, which makes compliance very difficult, particularly for an authentic party of idealistic people who want to be engaged in politics because they believe in saving the environment or whatever, and then they are very, very hardly regulated. The oligarchic parties don't have a problem with compliance. They can employ 4 lawyers, they will make sure that the report looks beautiful, and they have no intention to only stay within that framework. So they do a campaign within the legal framework, and then there is a different campaign outside of the legal framework. Secondly, we think about campaign financing as digital campaigning as if the campaign is supporting one party or another party. But the digital campaigns are about worldviews. The digital campaigns want to paint a very dark picture of the world where all the politicians are corrupt, where everybody's acting out of self-interest, where all politicians are incompetent except the tough guys. where European values are alien to the countries outside of Europe, where Europe, as we heard now with the Russians saying about Serbia, that they want to start a Maidan movement, and they want to enslave Serbia to Brussels, and our values are very different, etc. So these are the dark themes. Also very dark themes about war. This we saw in Georgia very much. We see it in Moldova as well. There will be war if we don't vote for the Russian side, etc. So those themes is what's being pushed in media, and those themes are what are going to make people not vote for the pro-democratic, pro-European alternative. So regulating the activity of parties is useless when you face those kinds of campaign. Now, when it comes to the capacity of actually monitoring the digital campaign, I think that there is a lot of effort being done. I think the countries themselves do it in different ways. I think the electoral commissions do it. In the case of Moldova, there is a Center for Strategic Communication under the parliament that monitors. And of course, there's also the security services, which I think often do the best job, but unfortunately, it's not in their culture to share their information with anybody. So they have a lot of knowledge, and all of a sudden they come out and say, oh, we know this and we know that, but they don't have a regular update to other authorities. Now, the problem in a country like Moldova, and I think that if we are people outside of countries trying to support countries, is that the institutions themselves have a very hard time recruiting capacity, whereas there is 7 or 8 different donor projects, because this is a sexy topic, employing people to help the institutions. And unless the institution is very good at coordinating these offers and very assertive and making very clear demands on the helpers, then all of them are going to do more or less the same thing, and they're going to compete with each other, and they're not going to share information with each other, and the total sum of those efforts is going to be much lower. So I think that my kind of feeling is that either you have to coordinate it extremely well, or actually the donor should consider building the capacity of the institution rather than having projects outside of the institution. That seems much more sustainable. Am I at 7 minutes? Oh, even 3 more minutes. All right, so then I have another point to make. Well, one point I want to suggest to you to think about is what is the difference between inauthentic behavior and digital partisans. Because in any, now in a modern campaign setting, if we are members of a party, then we are likely to send a link with some news to all the members of the party, and we say, oh, please share this in all your platforms. Now, this is called campaigning, but if we don't like the message, we call it inauthentic behavior. Of course, if it's automated, if we're posing as people that don't exist, etc., then of course it is something else. But we have to understand that, well, the digital world is a different world. Yeah, we're discussing something quite important, and well, of course, we will. In these days, we're going to mention the same things several times. But a development that I saw during my time in Moldova, I was there for 3 years. We did lots of media use studies and so on. And when I started and when we started polling, the TV was still #1 for news. And every year a TV viewer dies and a digital person comes of age, comes of voting age. And now in Moldova, the social media is #1 and TV is fading a little bit every year. And also during my time, and we were discussing Telegram yesterday, it's quite a small phenomenon in Moldova. The group that is using Telegram is very influenced by it, but it's not within the whole population. But we saw a steady increase of TikTok from quite a low level to now being number 2 in Moldova. And you know how influential and how important TikTok was in the Romanian elections. And in general, and I think this is in political campaigning and in communicating with the population, we have to realize that the reel is the format that people are absorbing. So there is reels on Facebook, reels on YouTube, and reels on TikTok. So we have to reinvent government communication. We have to fill up the information space with real information, with real news, at the same volume or at a higher volume than the volume of scam and bullshit that's coming out. And I think that governments are not that yet there. They think we'll make a press newsletter once a month, and that's how we communicate with the public. Now I think that we have to be much more active and fill the information space. I can see now my 7 minutes are done. I love this setting much more than what we had yesterday, because I hope that we can have a good discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. That was really inspiring. And as a Moldovan national, thank you for choosing Moldova to discuss about electoral monitoring and how we are innovating. And maybe just one line. Good practices from Moldova have been exported to Romania as well, specifically in terms of, digitalizing the counting of votes, because usually in Moldova we have the results in about 2-3 weeks after the polls are closed, while in Romania you had to wait almost 24 hours. So now Romania is also innovating due to Moldova. Thank you. Now we'll move to Levan Natroshvili. We know the difficult situation in Georgia, but I'll let you explain how that works. Thank you.
First of all, thank you so much for inviting me and for giving me an opportunity to speak about the issues which are very relevant not only in Georgia but across the world, I guess. I just changed my speech, I guess, based on the yesterday's discussions, because a lot of issues were covered yesterday, and of course the modification is very important when you speak about these kinds of issue, which is quite a popular issue right now in the world, and there are a lot of experts here. First point I wanted to raise here is that I had an impression yesterday mainly that we were discussing technologies and advancements in information technologies as inherently bad thing. And I want to convey a message that technological advancement is inherently a good thing, actually, because these advancements help various groups in the society to do their job more efficiently, and it created a lot of opportunities. Of course, it entails some risks, but we should treat technologies as inherently good developments and good things, and it's very important that it played a huge role in certain improvements in many countries. First of all, for instance, it gave some opportunities, new opportunities to those groups who were not traditional actors in politics, for instance, right? Smaller groups, smaller parties now can campaign in a much easier way. They don't need much money to organize their election campaigns, to raise some funds, also to organize some information campaigns. So that's why, of course, it significantly had a positive kind of effect on these kinds of developments, right? So we have seen a lot of movements, a lot of protests across the world organized through this technology. So that's why, of course, it created many new opportunities for political actors and also for citizen observers as well, media organizations as well. So we can use various tools developed by various companies or individuals, and it made also all this process more transparent compared to the previous kind of times, right? So that's very important to understand that technology is a good thing, and of course, as any other technology, information technology has also its risks, and of course we should address these risks. It also made possible for public institutions like election commissions and some other oversight institutions to work also more efficiently. So my colleagues mentioned here that the results can be now announced faster than usual. And this is a very good thing, actually, especially in those countries where democracies are fragile and the trust in the work of the election administration is low, and there are some doubts about the results manipulations, and it's very important to have these results on time. So that's why, of course, it's a positive aspect of this advancement. However, of course, there are a lot of risks related to the technologies, and mainly the observer organizations and civil society organizations, media organizations mainly work on these kinds of risks and negative aspects of technological advancements, and my organization also works on this. Mainly this is disinformation, misinformation campaigns, and we invented fancy words and fancy acronyms like FIMI, for instance, foreign information manipulation and interference. So this is a kind of real life for many countries, of course, that some other actors outside the country intervene in the politics, and they use various kinds of schemes how to manipulate public opinion, and they are in many cases extremely effective. And unfortunately, what we have seen during many years, not only such countries as Georgia, where political culture is not very well developed because of the Soviet history and other aspects, we have seen that in very well developed democracies as well, the people can be very easily manipulated, and we have seen a lot of examples of that. And in democracies, how people could be manipulated before elections, after elections, and increase the hatred and polarization in the society through TikTok or whatever platform very easily, very cheaply. So that's of course a reality as well, and we should know that our job, the job of civil society, the job of media organizations is somehow to tackle this problem. Also, one more aspect should be mentioned here, that although technological advancements somehow democratized the opportunities and democratized the means that can be used by various groups, non-traditional groups, of course it still creates unequal environment. Of course, it needs some professionalism, some expertise to use these technologies in a highly, efficient manner, and of course, it needs some money, and this money is not, a small amount, and we know that if you want to micro-target some groups in the society through various kind of algorithms, you should pay. You should, do some research, and of course, smaller groups in a society cannot afford such kind of expenses, right? So, although it created more kind of even environment in many countries, the advancement in technologies, however, of course, inequality still remains a problem. And finally, I wanted to raise a question of independent oversight institutions and the need for these kinds of institutions. We talked a lot, especially yesterday, about regulations, a lack of regulations, and all these kinds of things. But if you look at the countries, the less democratic countries have much more regulations actually than democratic countries. So this is not a correlation between the regulations, the existence of regulations, and the efficiency and the results, of course. And that's why we should be very careful with regulations as well. It's very important to have democratic institutions in the country first, and then regulations, because with the over-regulations, not only over, but just, enough regulations can be very risky for such countries where democracies are weak, because they can be very easily abused by these public institutions against those groups which are not, for instance, affiliated with the ruling parties. So that's why the risks are very high in such kind of societies. In Georgia as well, there was time when Georgia was #1 actually in the world, according to various kinds of polls, in terms of regulating political finance, for instance. However, today we see that these instruments were used against civil society organizations. I can give you a very specific example of Georgia when local branch, Tbilisi, Georgian branch of Transparency International, a well-known anti-corruption movement, they have been advocating for many years for creating an independent anti-corruption body in the country. And ultimately it was created back in 2022, and it was an irony that the first, almost first, I guess, job this anti-corruption bureau did was that they went after TI Georgia. So they basically declared TI Georgia as a political party, and that was a very viral case in Georgia a year ago, and it once again, shows that the regulations without independent institutions, without checks and balances in the country, can be a bad thing. And I don't know, maybe we can say also that if you don't have independent public institutions, if you don't have strong civic oversight in the country, I guess it's better not to regulate at all, rather than regulate and then it can be abused very harshly in the country against certain groups, especially opposition, especially independent civil society organizations and the media. However, of course, it doesn't mean that we should not regulate, we should not focus on these kinds of issues, but we should be very careful. That's a message I want to convey, of course, based on our example. And finally, I guess the final point, and I'm reaching the 7 minutes, okay, is that in many cases, you can solve a problem without regulating something in a legislation. For instance, we mentioned yesterday as well the importance of media literacy and in general education, right? So that's very important to educate certain groups in the society, influencers, leaders across the regions, regional leaders, central leaders, somehow to convey the message that there are some, very good products, very good opportunities, how you can educate yourself and distinguish between fake information and real information, how you can fact-check some, development. So this is very important. This is an ongoing process. This is a lifetime process, I guess. So there are no limits to educate yourself, and this is very important to have have opportunities to educate yourself, not only by public, institutions, but also civic institutions as well. And the role of civic institutions like civil society and media is very important in this. I guess this is the main thing I wanted to
Thank you, Levan.
Thank you.
That was really interesting. I retained the thought that you need to have strong and resilient institutions as opposed to creating more regulations. But sometimes this creates, a vicious circle. Which one is first? You need to have first institutions, or you need to have first regulations in order to avoid, abuse of administrative resources, or the fact that the party in power at some point can, impose some regulations that will actually affect democracy even more. We can discuss that at the Q&A session. Mulle, Musau, floor is yours. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. First, I want to thank EPDE for the invitation to be able to participate in this event. It allows us to be able to give you the African perspective of some of these issues. And it's very interesting listening to my two colleagues about their experiences, because you would think they are talking about Africa. I mean, a case in Moldova, and it's good that I'll be going to Moldova after this, just to go and get those experiences. I think we are facing similar problems. And I'll start with my proposal, because yesterday when we were in the final session, I tried to lift my hand to say the proposal which were asked by the last moderator. And I want to say we need to internationalize our solutions, because there's a way we are thinking within compartments and within small spaces about threats to electoral processes which are international in nature. When Toyota or Mercedes go into the production room to produce a car, they don't make a car for Germany. They make a car for the world. We need to internationalize the way we want to solve the problems of elections. Africa, as I said, the context, Africa is still facing the traditional problems, the initial problems, the authoritarianism in terms of the democratic progress. We're still somewhere down the line. We are still having coup d'etats in Africa. We have conflicts which are existing in different parts of the continent, some of them which have very serious implications on electoral processes and democracy. Case in point, of course, the Democratic Republic of Congo, the war in Sudan. All those are very serious implications, and they have been internationalized also in nature. The actors who are participating in these conflicts are international actors, and they have effects to the local populations and the local and the citizens of those respective countries. But you also have something else which is emerging in Africa, which is the rising of a new age. Africa has one of the youngest populations on the world. The median age around the continent is 19 years. And you've heard the stories which are now emerging in terms of the context that we have Gen Zs who are rising up. We have revolutions across different parts of the continent where they're demanding changes. But this is also coming now at a time where these hybrid threats that we're now coming to talk about are emerging. And that's why my argument is that we have the traditional problems, but now we are facing new internationalized problems because the question about disinformation or digital threats, they're international. We're dealing with multinational corporations, these social media companies, the big techs. They are in every space. And that young population in Africa is partaking in these particular spaces. So disinformation has a serious effect on how this young population is able to respond to electoral processes. And we have had so many cases. In Kenya, where I come from, for instance, as far back in 2017, we had the big problem of Cambridge Analytica, which was across the world, was also trying to influence and manipulate our electoral processes. We have had the question of money, and my colleagues from Zimbabwe will tell you about much more facts about the Al Jazeera documentary on the gold mafia in Zimbabwe and how that money is being used to influence electoral processes and electoral outcomes. So unless we come up with a solution which tries to deal with those issues with a package which deals with some of those issues, because the citizens can only do much, and I will end with the observation, what we can be able to do as citizen observers. But unless we start looking at those processes and those problems with a bigger focus, with a broader perspective, then we are not going to solve these problems with the narrow lenses that I think a lot of the discussion is about. There's only so much I can do within the East African region or in the Western African region or in a particular country when we are dealing with Meta, for instance, when we are dealing with TikTok and these big corporations and how they are influencing. I've still not talked about the legal landscape. My colleague is talking about the institutional framework. We still have a lot of problems with the institutionalization of processes on the continent. We still have very many gaps. We are trying to manage ourselves within an environment where we are addressing the local problems, but now international problems come in, and now we have to also deal with that. So that's why I'm saying, in my thinking and my proposal would be, we need to think about this broadly. If we are going to talk about, yesterday there was a discussion about the EU setting the gold standard as far as some of the institutional and guardrails against especially AI, technology, and everything else is concerned. That gold standard needs to be broader than just addressing the EU. We need to make an appeal that we try to bring in all the other regions into the fold. The same way the democratic process was sold, was religionized across the world, we need to religionize, or at least to spread it, evangelize, I think that's the right word, evangelize the question of that gold standard. How does Kenya address the problem of these hybrid threats, which are coming from, which are being controlled outside the country, and which the local actors like myself have to be able to respond to? So it is that aspect that I think we need to have a lot of discussions, but there are levels, there are issues that, there are areas where we are trying to address the issue. For instance, as election observers, of course, we have to, everybody knows that this is a discussion that we're all having, that we need to retool, we need to rethink the way we are looking at tracking and looking at these electoral processes. A question I wanted to ask, for instance, yesterday was, as observers, we seek access to information so that we can be able to make an opinion of an electoral processes. Pray, how do we do that with its multinational corporations? How do we access data from Meta and from TikTok so that we can be able to qualify the kind of applications, the kind of digital environment that they have created, so we can be able to know whether it has been manipulated or not. So those are already problems that we need to deal with. But like I said, the solution for me is to internationalize the process. We have a good case that we are already currently having as the African Election Observation Network. We are working closely with the EPDE at the moment to have a kind of a peer-to-peer exchange that allows us to be able to learn, get lessons. And Nino was in Tanzania about, was it last month? Last week, actually, last week, where she was able to share her experiences about how they've been dealing with the problems in Europe. I think that kind of approach, where we learn from each other, we try to share practices, experiences, then we can be able to start dealing with this particular problem. Because for me, the problem is broader than what we are looking at. It is not just a countries, not just a continent, but it's a global threat to democracy and to elections. Thank you.
Thank you, Mulle. Very insightful presentation. So, yeah, working in silos, of course, does not help. We should share those good practices that each and every country has in this topic of electoral monitoring. You will be going to Moldova. You hopefully will get some nice experience from there on how to observe elections. Last but not least, Eva Lazarova, and we'll have a perspective from a EU member country with the longest track of electoral cycles for the past, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, probably good afternoon for you, everyone. Let me start with, I'm sorry that I wasn't able to join you in person today. And I was thinking yesterday that it was perhaps symbolic that I could not make it to this conference because of the disruptions at Europe's airports these days. It actually reminded me how vulnerable even the most trusted systems can be to hybrid pressures. And I would like to somehow connect it to the electoral ecosystem. I think today elections face similar challenges, just as airports. They should remain secure and resilient to external interference. So it is our obligation to try and do our best to help the democratic processes in our countries. You already mentioned that we had quite a lot of elections in the last 5 years, 6 parliamentary elections, presidential elections, elections for the European Parliament, local elections as well. So yeah, Bulgaria is in a constant electoral cycle. Our organization, the Institute for Public Environment Development, operates the only voter information platform in the country. And we regularly inform the media on electoral related issues, particularly concerning electoral administration and its work, campaign financing, media monitoring, and so on. So in Bulgaria, the social media as well has become a decisive factor in the recent elections. Since 2021, several new parties, most of them, particularly all of them, populist and pro-Russian formations, have bypassed the traditional media and campaign structures, building their support almost entirely on through Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. Meanwhile, as we monitor the money in campaigns, spending campaigns, our monitoring shows that almost 30% of all money are spent for online media. Unfortunately, our situation here has exposed 3 main vulnerable issues and things. First of all, the regulatory gaps. Social media are excluded from the definition of media services. Also, we have weak institutional capacity and authorities basically cannot effectively monitor online campaign financing spending, or they cannot enforce the DCA. We also, unfortunately, have societal suspectability. Let me point out, just for example, because I heard the other speakers as well, we have some of the Bulgarian citizens, unfortunately, have nostalgia for Russia, and also limited media literacy, which of course increases the vulnerability to disinformation. So I was thinking, what can civil society do to fill these gaps? We basically, like NGOs in Bulgaria, basically focus on fact-checking, on monitoring campaigns, tracking political finance. Yet these efforts cannot fully, unfortunately, replace the robust regulation and the institutional oversight. And as for technologies, emerging new tools and technologies offer opportunities to NGOs that could strengthen their electoral observation and advocacy. I also want to add some of the good sides of technologies and the way they can help NGOs. As previous speakers, I was thinking about how automated systems can track, for example, political ads, fake narratives, and so on, and this could happen in real time. Also, tools can make campaign finance flows in a more transparent way. Tools can help NGOs, for example, and journalists in this sphere to expose hidden spending on social media. Crowdsourced reporting apps can allow citizens to point out suspicious behavior that could enable observers to build broader evidence bases. Of course, media literacy technologies, gamified fact-checking apps, for example, digital literacy tools, those can all reach the younger voters where disinformation thrives anyway, on TikTok, on YouTube, on Instagram, for example. Yet technology, unfortunately, cannot be the silver bullet, but combined with our human expertise and the civic education, it can help technology. It can help election observers and our NGOs to detect manipulation in a faster manner. It could help us present evidence more clearly to different target groups and audiences, and help us to advocate for smarter regulations, for example. And I was thinking on some questions that we could discuss on. Those are basically in two spheres. Could regional cooperation, for example, in developing digital monitoring tools, make election observation more resilient to hybrid threats? And how can observers bridge the gap between fast-moving technologies and the slow-moving regulations in our countries? And I believe I was about talking about 7 minutes, so hopefully I did it.
Thank you, Eva. Yes, you did it. And I was also having this problem that I might not get to Brussels because of the havoc that was happening during these days. I made it, but then just imagine that if such thing can happen to, I don't know, to the Electoral Commission's website, which is counting the votes, being hacked on the night of the elections, what that would trigger. But I'm opening the floor to the audience for the questions. Please introduce yourself when addressing the question, and whom would you like to address it to? Thank you. The gentleman behind, and then the gentleman in front.
Hello everyone, I'm Nandor Toth from Stateless Election Technologies, and I have a question to Mr. Ängeby regarding the upcoming Moldovan elections. So, do you expect to have more issues, especially after the turmoil in the Romanian elections, or because it seems or feels less important than the elections last year, it's going to be less attacks to be expected?
Let's take the second question as well. So,
hello, Rasta Kuzel, Memo 98. Thank you very much for very good presentations. I wanted maybe to come back to what Martin and Levan were talking in terms of this capacity building of institutions. Yesterday I mentioned that apart from weaponizing the information space, these actors are also weaponizing institutions. And so basically coming back to what you were saying about donors, targeting, various institutions, providing similar type of support, whether enough was done in the past. If we see that you change one person in an institution and then the institution basically is not independent any longer. So the personalized approach. And then as an alternative, because I still would challenge a little bit Levan that I think we still need the framework in place. I agree that we should not overregulate because that creates negative precedences for the bad actors to use it against. But I still think we need that framework in place. But whether we, by investing still more into civil society, because creating these parallel sort of structures, whether this is not still something more tangible from a long-term perspective. I mean, it can go either way because we've seen projects where from institution it just went to civil society and it's doing the job. But whether we haven't done mistakes in the past by putting too much effort, maybe prior to elections, but not on this institutional capacity building, if then we have one single change in the leadership of the institution and then immediately the institution is losing independence. So maybe just a question about this thought, how to approach this problem from a longer term perspective.
thank you, Martin.
Yes, I take the first question about Moldova. There is no evidence whatsoever that the Russians have given up on Moldova. They are, I mean, every day there's new things disclosed. Just this week, the security police disclosed training of rioters that had been taking place in Serbia by KGB officers. The vote buying schemes remain. They have been infiltrated by independent media before the last two elections, and it's ongoing. So yeah, no, they have not given up. When it comes to, and it's an interesting thought, building the institutional capacity so that the institution is functioning even if you change the head to somebody who's not committed. Of course, the institution will then keep working for a while, but over time probably it will be unsustainable, the people will leave or they will not work very hard. So that kind of suggests that yes, you do want independent organizations to do a lot of monitoring, and I think this is very important. But at the same time, I'm thinking about all the projects that are in support of the institution, that are helping the institution with the staff that should be working in the institution. So you work for GIZ instead of working for the Election Commission. You work in the UNDP. You're a great expert, and you're not working inside of the institution because the salary in the UNDP is higher, and it seems like a better career, and that is a problem, and it has to be addressed. And I think very tough coordination by the institution. I think that sometimes the institutions feel that they have to comply with the wishes of the donors. They have to be polite to them, etc. I don't think they understand that for the donor organization, they want to please. I mean, they want to be there for the organization. And if the organization says, oh, sorry, we don't need that, get out of the door, then they will come back with what you need because it's their job to support you. And they cannot write a letter home saying, well, we're sitting here rolling our thumbs because and the Electoral Commission doesn't want this particular round of gender training or whatever it is that they are offering. Yeah, I'll stop there and give the chance to the others.
Levan, do you want to respond?
No, just a comment on that, not a response. We basically had a similar situation when the professionals were, hired by various donors, USAID, UNDP, and what was curious that these professionals basically then moved to the government. And right now they are the harsh critics of the civil society, of the West in general. The Prime Minister, the chairperson of the parliament, they basically criticize every day the ambassadors of various countries, European countries, the United States. So these guys are right now used against the West, against the donors. So that's a very important thing to underline, that if the institutions are not there, and you depend only on certain individuals, of course it will not work in the long run, of course. It can long for short term, but in the long run you need some kind of institutional history, experience based on bureaucracy, and also you need some checks and balances. You need an independent judiciary system, for instance, which is also very important. Without that, of course, it would be very hard to implement any kind of reform.
Thank you, Levan. One more round of questions. The lady here in front.
Hürriyem Mehmeti, representing Hybrid Info, fact-checking outlet within Action for Democratic Society in Kosovo. I will relate more to what Ms. Lazarova mentioned. I wanted to know from your perspective, how can civil society fact-checkers collaborate better with election observers just to ensure that disinformation affecting electoral processes is quickly being identified and addressed? Thank you.
Any more questions? The lady in the fourth row.
Yeah, thank you very much. Sarah Birete from the Eastern Horn of Africa Election Observers Network. I would like to build on the issue of cross-border manipulation raised by Mulle and ask the EU colleagues, you have done so well in regulation of technology and use of AI in elections, but there are still some risks like cross-border manipulation. And like as we arrived in Brussels, there was that cyber attack on the check-in system. So given that there are challenges of digital sovereignty and you cannot promote internet usage using the R3 borders or sovereign borders, what efforts can be taken to really make the internet better and give it opportunities to improve our electoral processes and election integrity. Thank you.
Levan, would you like to take the first question?
Thanks for the question. As we being electoral observers and working here with fact checkers in Bulgaria, I'm pretty sure that we can cooperate in different manners and complement each other efforts. For example, fact checkers are out there tracking social media, spotting disinformation, flagging other foreign influence in our country, while we here are focused more on what's happening on the ground. For example, campaign activities, compliance with the electoral regulations, what is happening in the polling stations during election day. Yet when we share what we have found in our work, in our initiatives, we can, for example, produce joint reports which can give a much clearer picture of what's going on and also can help build a wider public trust. We can also work together on trainings, on awareness campaigns, for example. Even regional cooperation can be taken in mind. So both, so that we can make both online and offline threats to elections get addressed in a more coordinated way.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
So I just wanted to add on the question of how to work with fact checkers, because one of the things that we are doing is that we also have within our media monitoring units, the one that we established within the observation framework, we are able to either have them as strategic partners to ensure that any information that is being collected from the field can be fact-checked, or make them members of the enterprise of election observation, of course with very clear TORs in terms of how they can be able to assist in terms of the development of the information and the reports that come from our findings.
Does anyone want to address the question about cross-border manipulation? How do we make internet safer for election monitoring?
Yeah, I think, and it's on a very principled level when it comes to the internet. And I think that we were going there a little bit yesterday. The commissioner, no, the MEP from the Green Group, I thought was actually expressing some new ways of defining the concepts that are facing us. And I think one thing that we should apply when it comes to media platforms is the principle of reciprocity. It's a very human principle. So you do to me what I do unto you. Everybody understands it. So if European companies cannot distribute information in China, then Chinese companies cannot distribute information in Europe. It's a very simple principle. Everybody will understand it. And the second thing is that the social media platforms are very adamant that they are not responsible for what's being published, right? Because they are an infrastructure, so they should then be defined as a critical infrastructure in our society, and a critical infrastructure needs state control. It's with the television networks, the cables and everything. It's a critical infrastructure, and so is social media. So we have to start addressing the concepts in a different way. We were surprised when these new things came, but actually we need a language to define them, and then we can work with them in the right way.
If I may, about the cross-border cooperation between various actors, it's very important, especially in certain regions, I guess, because in our region, in Eastern Europe especially, of course, these kinds of disinformation, misinformation campaigns and foreign interference, basically they are coming from one source, and this is Russia mainly, right? So the tactics are the same, the narratives are the same, messages are the same, so that's why, of course, cross-border cooperation is very important, because there might be some, good practices, how you tackle some, disinformation campaign, for instance, and sharing this information, sharing this methodology is very important, especially in those regions where we have this kind of one country-centered disinformation and propaganda, campaigns.
Thank you. Any more questions? No. I think we will wrap it here. Thank you for the wonderful speakers. A round of applause to them. And one kind request on behalf of GMF, there is a QR code for a online evaluation or online questionnaire. Please help us and fill it in. Thank you.
Hello, hello.
Thank you.